What's up, guys? 0-3 last night, 0-5 over the last 2 days. Awesome, obviously. It should have been a 2-1 night last night. Portland Trailblazers, fuck them. Basically, they lost by 62 points. They were kind of hanging around the number throughout the first half and had just a horrific second quarter and third quarter. Really crazy. I don't even know how that happened. The Blazers actually had they had more field goal attempts in the game, more 3-point attempts. Free throws were almost even. It's just, I think there was like a 50% to 20-something% field goal percentage. And of course, they were way behind, so they were just chucking up shots. So that's part of it. But they still had like more possessions than Oklahoma City did, and they still lost by 62. You don't typically see something like that. So they got blown out for sure, but I don't think statistically the game should have been as much of a blowout as it was. I think it just completely unraveled. And the other two games both should have won. The LA Kings never trailed until the final score. They lost in overtime by 1. They were winning 1-0. They were winning 2-1. And they lost. They gave up the tying goal, I think, in the third period, and then they lost in overtime. And that was the only time they were ever losing in the game. When you have an underdog price like that, and that's what they do, and they're never trailing in regulation, never trailing in the whole game, pretty much, that kind of tells you you're on the right side, even though statistically, yeah, I mean, they lost the statistical battle a little bit, I suppose, but it was a pretty close game. But that pretty much tells you the underdog was the right way to go in that one. And then UL Monroe was the worst one. That final score does not indicate what happened in that game at all. That game was extremely low scoring. That was a game where UL Monroe was going to have a wire-to-wire cover, basically. They were winning the game outright at halftime. They were still within 2 with like 4 minutes left in the game. They wound up losing by 13 or something. I don't even know what happened in the closing couple of minutes of that game, because they were going to potentially win the game, and then all of a sudden they're down double digits like a minute later. I don't know what the hell that was. But a game that was like that low scoring with that little time left, a game that was in like the high 40s, low 50s with like 3 or 4 minutes to go, and it's still a 2-point game. Obviously, you're on the right side with the +5. It was a letdown spot for Southern Miss. It happens. You hit rough patches like this. I'm pissed. Those two games both should have been winners. So an 0-3 night that really is not what it appeared. We move on from that. Tonight I only have one play. I'm only playing what is my favorite play on the entire card. I'm just staying away from everything else. Not happy about this. It is kind of a short card because it's Friday, but NHL, only 2 games, not playing them. You got Nashville, Dallas. Dallas down from -185 to -173. 92% of the cash on them and 88% of the tickets on them. This is an interesting one. Dallas just did a home-and-home sweep of Minnesota. But before that, they lost at home to Dallas. Or, excuse me, Dallas. Dallas lost at home to Nashville. So is that going to motivate Dallas a bit? I don't know, because they are the public team here, and the money line's kind of dropping on them. But I don't know. I think there could be some of that recency revenge type of thing going on there with Nashville coming into Dallas there. I don't know what Nashville did in their last game, but they lost 5-3 to the Ducks, so that looks pretty bad too. That was I should have actually played against Nashville in that one. That was a Dallas sandwich for Nashville there. They just won at Dallas, had to play one home game against the Ducks, and then go back out and play Dallas again. I think the Ducks might have been in a spot where I couldn't quite get there with them, but so that was an ugly loss for Nashville, too. So maybe they'll bounce back and play well again against Dallas. But is Dallas going to have enough of that quick revenge motivation there? It's a tough one to handicap, which is why I'm not on it. And the Minnesota Wild down from -120 to -108, but 61% of the cash on them. Tickets look like they're 50-50. I don't even so I know that Minnesota's off the back-to-back losses to Dallas, which I just said. Wait, is that even right? I don't even know if that's right. I think that's right. Philadelphia just beat the Canadiens. I don't know if that really matters either. But yeah, the Wild lost horribly to the Stars twice in a row. So they might be in a bounce back mode there. So I don't know. I might lean to the Wild slightly there, but the line has gone way down on them. So I don't know. It's tough. Yeah, those are tough games to read. over in the NBA, there's like nothing I even want to like touch in this game. It's just you look at a team and they look like they're in a bad spot, and then you see the other team is in an even worse spot, and it's like, what are we even doing here? I don't even know if I want to comment on any of this. It's just, it's just so bad. I lean to Portland again, but I'm not gonna get involved in it. The T-Wolves are up from -14 to -15, but it's like, how could you possibly play the T-Wolves in this spot? There's no way that you should. They just lost in overtime to the Celtics. They're returning home from a 4-game road trip that took them to Houston, Dallas, not as far, but then Orlando, so down to Florida, and then on a back-to-back up to Boston. I think the Celtics rested Porzingis in that one, but that was crazy that Minnesota was in such a bad rest spot there, and they still showed up and sent the game into overtime. Now with one day off, they're coming back home and facing the Blazers, who just lost by 60-something points, and they have the Clippers up next. This spot is so bad for Minnesota. I'm not even going to get involved when it's a double-digit spread. I'm sorry. But Oklahoma City, they've been the team that has just been covering in every single bad spot, basically, so I should not have been on the Portland game there. But Portland, I don't really want to be on them anyway here, as bad as the spot is for Minnesota. Portland's on a back-to-back, as we know, but they lost so embarrassingly last night that they're probably going to want to show something in this game, some sense of pride. But they're still on a back-to-back, a third game in 4 nights, a fourth game in 6, it's a fifth game in 8, and it's a 6th game in 9, and it's a 7th game in 11 days, all in different cities, or 7th game in 12, maybe, whatever it is, all in different cities, all on the road. So coming to the end of that road trip, they have almost no rest there. So it's just such a bad spot for Portland. I'm just not going to be on that game at all. I'm just not going to do it. I just can't. And then I don't know if there are any other situations that I was looking at there. I could say, well, Memphis is returning home from a road trip, so that doesn't look great for them, but I think they'll still probably be focused, even though they're coming off. They have 2 days off. They're coming off a nice sweep on the road of LA, Phoenix, LA Lakers, I should say, Phoenix and Dallas. But now they have the other LA team coming in the Clippers. So I don't think they're going to really overlook the Clippers, because we know the Clippers are really good. The Clippers are coming off kind of an escape against Toronto. That was it came on the heels of them losing close to the Lakers and then beating Phoenix. So a couple of big games there. So they didn't really have the greatest game against Toronto, which is understandable. Now they go out on the road. I think they might put in a better performance against Memphis, but you'd have to lay 8 or something like that on the Clippers, so I'm not doing that either. They're up from 7.5 to 8. They're going to be the public team. The percentages haven't really come to fruition yet here, so I don't really see those yet, but I don't like the spot the Grizzlies are returning home from a road trip. The one thing is they'll probably still be focused because it is the LA Clippers who they're facing here, so one of the better teams in the Western Conference. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with those. I don't like any of it. Moving to college basketball, the one game that I absolutely want to be on, but the books are just like giving a nice big FU to you, is Nebraska, Iowa. Nebraska is in such a major letdown spot. They just upset Purdue. Huge win for Nebraska. There's no way I would want to touch Nebraska. I want to fade Nebraska. Problem is, and Iowa, I think Iowa's in a good spot. They had lost at least one game prior to beating Rutgers. I believe they beat Rutgers in their last game. I think Rutgers, I don't know if that was Rutgers being off of the nice win over Ohio State, or was it a different? I don't even know what it was. So Iowa beat Rutgers. They had lost to Wisconsin before that. So I think beating Rutgers, I think that might be like a new momentum starter. So I do like that aspect of the spot for Iowa as well. And Rutgers was off beating Indiana, excuse me. They lost to Ohio State and then lost the game to they lost to Ohio State. But they were off a close game against Ohio State. That's what it was. And then he beat Indiana after Iowa. So Rutgers is in a close they were in a bad spot because they had just played Ohio State pretty close. So Iowa was able to take care of them in that game. I think it was a good momentum starter for Iowa. Everything about this is just Nebraska letdown spot, man. Huge letdown spot for Nebraska. Why am I not on it? Oh, because I thought the books might bring this line out somewhere near a pick 'em. Nebraska According to Ken Palm, according to the better power ratings, Nebraska's the slightly better team. They don't really have any key injuries here. They're the slightly better team. So you expect this line, maybe the books would shade it a little bit towards Iowa because it's a letdown spot for Nebraska, and the books kind of know about that at this point. So I expected like the line would be one of the teams would be favored by 1, maybe Iowa 1. I would jump in on Iowa if it was just to pick the winner like this. No, it looks like it came out at 2.5 at one point. I don't know when it was that. I saw it's 3.5 still at some books, but consensus is Iowa 4.5 at this point. So the game is basically unplayable at that number, even though it's a terrible spot for Nebraska. I just can't do it, even though you got to assume that Iowa at home, they're probably going to have the ability to dictate the pace of the game. Iowa plays a very fast tempo, faster than Nebraska does. So the game probably will play to Iowa's pace, and that might help a team cover the number. Both of these teams are actually pretty good offensively. But Iowa's more they're not good perimeter shooters this year, which is weird because usually we know that Iowa hits all these 3-pointers. Not this year. They're really good like in the paint this year. They're good at the 2-point offense this year, but I can't lay the points like this, man. When Ken Palm has Nebraska by 1 in this game and has Nebraska the slightly better team, there's no way the line should be this high. The books are accounting for it being a letdown spot for Nebraska, which sucks because now the books are like taking away one of the best tools in my arsenal here, which is playing against teams in prime letdown spots. So I hope this is not a trend because this is just awful. I want to play Iowa here. I just cannot lay that many points with Iowa. If we see the line come like down, I doubt that it will. But if we see it start coming down, if numbers guys start driving the line back down towards Nebraska, maybe I'm going to jump in on this. If it gets down to like Iowa 2, I might want to do it. But as it stands right now, not happening. Boise is kind of in a letdown spot as well, coming off a big win over Colorado State, a ranked Colorado State team. Big win at home for Boise State, but they're going to Nevada. Nevada's a 6-point favorite, but I don't think that you really want to fade Boise when they're facing one of the best teams in their conference here in the Mountain West in Nevada. So I think they're going to bring focus for this game too. Nevada does have San Diego State up next, which is a big game, but I think they're going to be focused on Boise as well. I think Nevada's sitting at a 6-point favorite. I think that this is going to be one of the better games on the board tonight. I think it's an interesting looking game for sure. So that's what I'll say about that one. And then I lean to Duquesne. I'm not quite sure if I can get there at Duquesne. They're up from 1 to 1.5 as a home favorite. The line looks totally suspicious because you got Dayton as the team with the better record. Dayton, probably the best team in the Atlantic 10. They're good. They just beat UMass, who's playing decent this year. They beat Davidson before that, but Davidson maybe a little bit down. Davidson has a good overall record, but they're 0-2 in conference so far. So I don't know how good Davidson even really is this year. Probably not as good as some of those other years. Dayton on a huge winning streak, man. They haven't lost since they lost to Houston on November 19th. Dayton has not lost since then, and they had one canceled game in there against UNLV, which I think was probably because of that school shooting. That was around that time. Dayton, yeah, they've been winning. They haven't lost since then. They played pretty well against Houston in that game. They beat St. John's before that. They played pretty well against Northwestern. They beat Cincinnati. There's nothing on Dayton's schedule that makes you think that Dayton's not going to just easily win this game against Duquesne. Why is Duquesne favored against Dayton? I mean, the line is telling you that Dayton is still the better team, which they are, but it's favoring Duquesne at home. Duquesne, they're coming off kind of a tough game, though, against Loyola Chicago, who's not a bad team this year either, and that was a close game. Duquesne had the lead for the whole first half, basically into the second half, and then blew it. So that keeps me off of Duquesne a little bit. For one thing, is the fact they're coming off a tough game against Loyola, but this is going to be their conference home opener, so I do think they're going to be focused on Dayton. So I do still like Duquesne here because I think they're going to step it up for the best team in the conference, in their home opener here, and the line looks way too suspicious. It looks way too easy to take Dayton. And the other thing about this is before the Loyola game, Duquesne lost by 19 points at UMass, and that's a UMass team that Dayton just beat. So people are going to look at this and say, wait a minute, Dayton just beat UMass, and UMass totally destroyed Duquesne. So This is so easy. If Dayton can beat UMass, who destroyed Duquesne, then Dayton's just going to easily beat Duquesne. How am I getting like a point and a half with Dayton here? I think that's, there's a syllogism aspect of this. I like Duquesne here. I just can't quite get there because of the spot Duquesne is in is not quite good enough for me. And because I think KenPom, I think the line is a little bit off on this one. And again, I think the books might be kind of taking away some of our tools, man. They're adjusting for some of these spots now, which I really don't like. Although it's not really a letdown spot for Dayton. I don't think they care that much about beating UMass, even though UMass is okay this year. I'd probably be on Duquesne if it was a sandwich spot, to be honest, but it's not. Dayton has St. Louis up next. Not as big a game there. But KenPom has Dayton by 3 in this one. So he's got Dayton ranked 31st and Duquesne 101st. So it's a little bit dicey, but I still like Duquesne in that one. The game that I'm actually on to close things out here for this video, although I actually lean to Rice as well. Why am I not on Rice? I think KenPom probably is keep me away from this one too. I like Rice in this one. South Florida, they're in a sandwich spot, man. Before I get out of here, I do lean to Rice. South Florida just lost a big win streak they had. They had a bunch of wins in a row, although not too much of it was very impressive. Best wins were against Florida State, I guess, just because they're an ACC team. But that was as an in-state little brother with South Florida there. And then against Loyola Chicago, an okay win there. They played a tough game against UAB and lost. They were hanging around with UAB the whole game and then wound up losing in the end to UAB, who is currently ranked second in the American Conference, even though I think they're probably maybe the third or fourth best team in the conference because they're not actually better than Florida Atlantic. They should be behind Florida Atlantic and Memphis power rating-wise. But UAB, certainly a pretty good team in the conference. And South Florida has Memphis up next in 6 days. So this is a sandwich spot. Rice is at the bottom of the barrel in this conference. I think they're going to overlook Rice. Rice coming in off a bad loss again. I thought that it was a good bounce back spot for Rice after an embarrassing loss to Tulane where they lost by a ton. UTSA was in some tougher spot there, and Rice still couldn't get it done as a pretty decent favorite, and they wound up losing in overtime. I think they were like an 8-point favorite or something like that, but now because Rice lost as a pretty big favorite to one of the other bottom teams in the conference, that might refocus them. I think they might be refocused for South Florida here. Problem I have with this is that the line's 5.5 on South Florida. It's actually down from 6.5 to 6 actually, 6 or 5.5. KenPom, however, has this line at 8. So that gut check there just has to keep me off of this one too, man. The books seem to be just ripping our hearts out here with these lines and just giving us these bad numbers. I just can't play these games, man. It's just really tough because situationally, yeah, I love Iowa situationally. I would take it if the line was like right around a pick 'em. I like Duquesne. That one I'm closer to actually playing with the way the number is there. I like Duquesne in that one, and I like Rice, it being a sandwich spot for South Florida. But I'm not going to take 6 when or 5.5 or whatever it is when KenPom has this at 8. I just can't quite do it, man. But it is a bad spot for South Florida. All that being said, right before I get out of here, the game that I'm actually on, what am I doing? I'm playing Wright State, plus 1.5. The line's just been sitting at 1.5, so this one I like. This one also looks suspicious because you got Wright State team who's behind Youngstown State in the standings. They're at Youngstown. Youngstown's 4-2 in conference, 12-5 overall. Wright State also 4-2 in conference, but 9-8 overall. People are going to look at this and think, like, wait a minute. Like, this game is basically just pick the winner here. Like, how is this not, like, easy? Youngstown State has a better record, and they're at home, and you're laying only 1.5 with them. That's what I think a typical bettor might think here. Youngstown, they are one of the best teams in this conference, in the horizon. I think Purdue-Fort Wayne is still the best. IPFW is still probably the best team in the conference. I think Wright State actually is maybe the second best if you look at how the power ratings shape up right now. And Youngstown actually might be number 3 in the conference right now. But Youngstown, they're coming off beating IPFW, a huge win there. Beating IPFW, that was a big matchup. And they were blowing the doors off of IPFW and then had to put in some effort. They were up by almost 30 in the second half and then had to put in some effort late in the game because IPFW made a massive comeback and made a game out of it. And Youngstown had to turn it on again at the end to put them away. That was a great game for Youngstown, though. pretty convincing win over the top team in the conference at the time, IPFW. Now they're coming off that, and they have Wright State coming in, who they are one of the better teams in the conference, but it doesn't really look like it with their overall record. So they might overlook them a little bit, and they have Oakland up next, and Oakland is actually at the top of the conference right now because they're 5-2. So does that make this a bit of a sandwich spot? I don't know. I mean, it still might bring some focus on Wright State because they know Wright State isn't that bad. But when they're coming off such a high, beating IPFW, and they have Oakland, who's even higher in the standings than IPFW on deck, I don't know. Maybe they're not going to be totally focused on Wright State here. Wright State, they're coming off a game that I unfortunately played Robert Morris, and Wright State was coming off a win over IPFW on the road. That was a nice win for Wright State there. They've scored 100 points in 2 straight games. So that gives you a little bit of hesitation because they just look like a scoring machine right now. And it's their 3rd straight road game. So those things caused me to pause a little bit here, but I think the Robert Morris game was just kind of a tune-up, man. They did not have to put in a big effort there. Youngstown had to put in a much, much bigger effort, I think, on the same night to beat IPFW, while Wright State was having an easy go of it at Robert Morris. And that shows me something with Wright State because that was a sandwich spot between IPFW and Youngstown. Wright State still went in and just demolished Robert Morris. So that shows me something out of Wright State here. People are going to look at this record and look at the line and think it looks easy to take Youngstown. Youngstown just beat IPFW. They're a team that has like a record that's like 3 games ahead of what Wright State's is. Overall record, even though same in conference. I say not so fast. Ken Baum actually has Wright State as the better team. Ken Baum actually has Wright State higher than IPFW now, too. Ken Baum actually has these 4 teams all clustered in their power ratings wise with Oakland, Wright State, IPFW, and Youngstown. He has them all within like 13 power rating points of each other, or 20 power rating points or power rating rankings of each other. So that's crazy. But he's got this game as Youngstown winning the game by 1, which is kind of right in line with where the number is. I think the number is very fair. It's right about right. Youngstown is right. Wright State is actually the slightly better team, which looking at the records, you wouldn't think that. I'm taking Wright State. I think Youngstown's in a little bit of a letdown spot here. Unfortunately, I can't play situations that I think are even better than that one because the numbers are all so bad. These books, man, they're killing us with some of these numbers tonight. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm on a bad stretch of 2 days here where I'm 0-5. Yet last night should have been 2-1. We'll see what happens. Hopefully we turn it around. It's very possible we go 0-1 tonight. What can you do? Trust the process, man. We live to see better days. Now, my NFL video is up too for the weekends. Hopefully those plays go well. Hopefully the weekend gets kicked off right. Hopefully we have a decent weekend, man. Saturday, I'm going to have some college plays on Saturday for sure. So tomorrow, peace, man. Have a good weekend.